You know that moment every year when the entire country seems to pause for one event? The snacks are bought, the jerseys are on, group chats explode, and if you say, "I'm not watching the Super Bowl," people look at you like you just confessed you don't breathe air. For years, some people quietly wondered if something was wrong with them because they simply didn't care. Not out of rebellion, not to be different, they just felt nothing about it. No hype, no countdown, no emotional investment in who wins or loses. Psychologically, that indifference is far more interesting than we think. First, we need to separate two experiences our culture constantly confuses: disinterest and disconnection. Not caring about the Super Bowl doesn't automatically mean someone is antisocial, cynical, or incapable of bonding. It simply means their motivational wiring doesn't attach emotional value to that particular event. And motivation, according to decades of personality research, is deeply personal. Let's start with personality structure. If you look at the Big Five personality model, the most widely studied framework in modern psychology, you'll find traits like extroversion and openness to experience play a huge role in how people respond to massive social events. Highly extroverted individuals often experience collective gatherings as energizing. They enjoy synchronized emotion, cheering together, reacting together, sharing the moment. It stimulates their reward circuitry. But introverted individuals process stimulation differently. For them, large-scale emotional environments can feel overwhelming or simply unnecessary. It's not that they dislike people, they just don't derive energy from synchronized excitement. Their nervous system prefers depth over volume. Then, there's the concept of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Some people engage in activities because they genuinely enjoy them. Others engage because of social reinforcement, belonging, approval, shared identity. The Super Bowl is a powerful cultural ritual. For many, watching it signals membership. It says, "I'm part of this collective." But individuals high in intrinsic motivation are less swayed by cultural rituals. They ask a simple question: does this genuinely interest me? If the answer is no, they don't feel compelled to participate just to signal belonging. And here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. People who don't care about the Super Bowl often score higher in what psychologists call self-concept clarity. That means they have a stable internal sense of who they are. Their identity isn't heavily dependent on cultural trends or shared rituals. When everyone else is emotionally synchronized, they don't feel a threat to their belonging simply because they're not synchronized too. This ties into emotional autonomy. Research on self-determination theory suggests that people who feel autonomous in their choices experience less anxiety about social conformity. If you're secure in your social bonds, you don't feel pressure to prove participation. You don't need to watch something to validate connection. Another factor? Cognitive preference. Some individuals are simply more oriented toward abstract thinking, reflection, or niche interests. During a high-stimulation event like the Super Bowl, their brain may be craving something else: reading, building, creating, exploring ideas. It's not boredom, it's cognitive mismatch. The brain seeks what aligns with its reward patterns. Neuroscience tells us dopamine isn't just about pleasure. It's about anticipation tied to personal relevance. If football doesn't hold personal relevance, the dopamine spike doesn't occur. And without that anticipation circuit activated, the event feels emotionally neutral. Now, let's address the social dynamic. Large collective events create what psychologists call emotional contagion. When thousands or millions of people share a synchronized reaction, it amplifies the experience. Even commercials during the Super Bowl are engineered for shared response. But emotional contagion works best when the person is already receptive. Individuals who don't care about the Super Bowl often have stronger emotional regulation. They're less susceptible to collective mood shifts. That doesn't mean they're cold. It means they don't automatically mirror the emotional temperature of a crowd. In fact, research on conformity, including classic studies from social psychology, shows that some individuals are naturally lower in normative social influence. They're less driven by the need to align with group expectations. This doesn't make them contrarian, it makes them internally anchored. And here's something people rarely say out loud. Not caring about the Super Bowl can actually signal high psychological security. When someone can comfortably say, "It's not my thing," without defensiveness or superiority, that reflects identity stability. They're not attacking the event, they simply don't attach meaning to it. Now, let's look at upbringing and environment. Cultural rituals carry different emotional weight depending on childhood experience. If someone grew up in a household where football Sundays were bonding moments, the Super Bowl may represent nostalgia, connection, and memory consolidation. The brain links the event with warmth. But if those associations weren't formed, the event remains neutral. There's no emotional memory network attached to it, and the brain doesn't fabricate significance without stored emotional reference. Another overlooked factor is attentional style. Some people are drawn to narratives of competition and victory. Others are more drawn to narratives of introspection, ideas, or personal mastery. Competitive sports appeal strongly to those who resonate with dominance hierarchies and strategic combat. That aligns with certain temperamental traits. But others derive meaning from entirely different forms of narrative: art, philosophy, technology, nature, spirituality. For them, 3 hours of sports doesn't stimulate their internal storyline. Here's the crucial distinction. Not caring does not equal social isolation. There's research involving tens of thousands of participants that distinguishes between social participation and felt belonging. A person can skip every major sporting event and still feel deeply connected in their relationships. The metric that predicts well-being isn't event attendance, it's perceived relational quality. And here's something counterintuitive. Individuals who don't feel pressured to participate in mass events often have stronger one-on-one relational depth. They prefer meaningful conversations over synchronized cheering. When they choose to gather, it's intentional. Now, to where it gets really important. Indifference becomes unhealthy only when it's rooted in cynicism or emotional withdrawal. There's a difference between "this doesn't interest me" and "nothing interests me." The first is personality alignment. The second may signal anhedonia or depressive patterns. So the real psychological question isn't, do you care about the Super Bowl? It's, does your indifference feel peaceful or disconnected? People who are psychologically healthy and don't care about the Super Bowl typically share several traits. They have high autonomy, they show low susceptibility to peer pressure, they maintain stable identity structures, they regulate emotion internally rather than externally, they pursue interests based on genuine curiosity rather than social validation. They don't feel bothered because they're not measuring themselves against cultural participation metrics. Cultural events like the Super Bowl function as collective mirrors. They reflect shared identity. But not everyone derives identity from shared spectacle. Some derive it from personal projects, intellectual exploration, or intimate connection. Human connection exists on a spectrum. Some people feel most alive in crowds. Others feel most alive in quiet focus. Neither is superior. They're simply different neurological and psychological orientations. If you've ever felt a slightly out of step when everyone else is hyped about something that leaves you neutral, psychology offers reassurance. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. Your motivational architecture is simply calibrated differently. The person grilling burgers and screaming at the screen isn't more socially evolved. The person reorganizing their bookshelf while the game plays in the background isn't antisocial. They're operating from different reward maps. At the end of the day, not caring about the Super Bowl isn't about football at all. It's about identity security, intrinsic motivation, attentional preference, and emotional autonomy. The real marker of psychological maturity isn't whether you participate, it's whether your choices align with who you actually are. And sometimes alignment means choosing the quiet while the world chooses the crowd. If this perspective resonated with you, consider subscribing for more psychological deep dives. And if you'd like to support the channel, becoming a member helps sustain thoughtful conversations like this.